Hello and welcome. I'm Ankit and you are watching the Daily News Simplified. Now, reading newspaper for most of the aspirants can be a taxing job because for newer aspirants, they are unable to understand the important terms which are given in daily newspaper articles. Whereas on the other hand, for more experienced of aspirants, they get too much information and hence they're confused of what to read and what not to read. So in this regard, the Daily News Simplify comes into picture because we establish the relevance of important news article vis-a-vis UPSC syllabus, and also we pick up important articles and analyze them from a 360-degree perspective. Hence, it is important to follow DNS on a daily basis. Now with prelims, as it is less than 60 days away, a candidate must follow the DNS on a day-to-day basis. Because as many of you have realized, we have increased the articles in the prelim section. And also, you never know what all articles and what all topics can appear in the prelims examinations. So please stay tuned for DNS on a daily basis if you want to clear prelims, because even the difference of one question can get you into mains or can even enable you not to write mains that year. So without taking much of your time, these are the 7 articles that we'll cover today, that is 29th of April. So let us start right away from the first article. But before moving forward, please make sure to hit the like button, and also please follow the Raus IAS News YouTube channel for daily current affairs analysis. Now this first article, as you can see, appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now, this article highlights that the NHRC, which is India's National Human Rights Commission, it is about to get the accreditation status reviewed by the Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions. Now, this body, as you can see in the news article, has highlighted few shortcomings in the functioning of India's NHRC. These are that India's NHRC is subjected to government interference, or with respect to members that constitute the NHRC. Because today's news article, it highlights that India's NHRC is primarily constituted by members from the judicial or police background. Further, the representatives of women as well as minorities have not been at the adequate number. Now this news article, it is important from GS paper 2 syllabus, because the syllabus highlights statutory, regulatory and various quasi-judicial bodies. And as you know, NHRC is a statutory body and is bestowed with few quasi-judicial powers as well. Further, questions have appeared on NHRC in mains examination before. Because case in point, this PYQ of the year 2014. So you can see a question directly appeared on relevance of NHRC vis-a-vis protection of human rights in India. So in this regard, let us understand what is this body all about and what are its various powers, important decisions and shortcomings vis-a-vis implementation of human rights in India. Now, as you can see, the National Human Rights Commission or NHRC, it is a statutory body which was established in the year 1993. Now, this body, it was established through a statute which was passed by the Indian Parliament, that was Protection of Human Rights Act of the year 1993 only. So, this NHRC, it is India's national watchdog for protection of human rights in India. Now, this body is composed of various different members, because the chairperson of this body should be either retired Chief Justice of India or a retired Supreme Court judge, whereas other members, they include one judge either serving or retired, that is judge of Supreme Court, one retired Chief Justice of a State High Court, and 3 members, all of whom have experience in matters of human rights. So these are the composition of human rights, that is NHRC, and this body, it also has few ex officio members, such as chairperson of the National Commission on Scheduled Caste, National Commission on Scheduled Tribes, National Commission for Women, minorities, backward classes, etc. So I've given the detailed composition in the notes which you can refer to after the session ends. Now let us understand what are the functions of National Human Rights Commission. Because this National Human Rights Commission, it ensures the inquiry in cases of violation of human rights, and it intervenes especially when the human rights violation is committed by a body which is affiliated by the government itself. So in this regard, the NHRC members, they do visit jails as well as holding centers or detention centers in order to understand what are the living condition of inmates in India's jails and detention centers. Further, this body, it also reviews constitutional as well as legal safeguards and also ensures their effective implementation in India. Further, there are many international treaties also which any government should implement. So this body, that is NHRC, it studies international treaties and also it highlights their relevance in the Indian context. So in a way, I can say that NHRC, it acts as a moral signboard for the government to implement international treaties in India. Further, this body promotes research and development in cases of human rights, and it also reviews factors such as terrorism, naxalism, or militancy, which affects the implementation of human rights in the country. Further, this body also undertakes education campaigns in order to make people understand what are their human rights. So, this is a watchdog which not just reviews the constitutional safeguards, but also make sure that the government implements the human rights conduct in its day-to-day affairs. So in this regard, let us understand what are the important achievements, especially by the NHRC in Indian context. Now, as you can understand, many various infrastructural mega projects, it can lead to displacement of local population. So in case of displacement of local population, this NHRC, it ensures that the displaced population is resettled and rehabilitated in a perfect manner. So in this regard, back in 2000s, especially in the year 2007, the NHRC, it reviewed land acquisition bill and rehabilitation and resettlement bill. So this was done in order to protect the displaced population, as by displacing a population from their native lands, it constitutes a violation of human rights. Further, India exists in a very different or a very difficult geopolitical situation currently, because India faces terrorism from other countries, is subjected to Naxal activities in red corridor states. So these are the security challenges that are there in India. So in this regard, Parliament of India and various state legislatures, they have enacted various laws to give excess powers to police in order to deal with national security challenge, be it Prevention of Terrorism Act or TADA Act, which was there in 1990s. These acts, they give police the excess powers to deal with national security situations. So to prevent misuse of these laws by the law enforcement agencies, the National Human Rights Commission, it undertook various education and encouragement of police services so that they should use these laws in a judicious manner. Further, the situation of farmers in the country is quite severe, especially in the states of Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh. And whenever the productivity or the agricultural situation of India faces crisis, India has witnessed high amount of farmers' suicides in the country. So in this regard, the NHRC took cognizance and it made sure that the Maharashtra government, it formed a district level committee to ensure the welfare of farmers. Whereas on the other hand, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, the National Human Rights Commission, it recommended formation of a Farmers Welfare Commission. So you can understand the situation or precarious situation of high suicide rates in the country. It was taken into cognizance by the NHRC, and it made sure to enact or to recommend the relief measures for farmers in the state of Madhya Pradesh and Andhra Pradesh. Further, Adivasis or the scheduled tribes in our country, they face violence at the hands of Naxalists. And this situation, it was brought to attention with the NHRC, especially in the case of Salwa Judum violence, which occurred in the state of Chhattisgarh. So in this regard, the NHRC it also undertook cognizance, and it highlighted that the government should undertake a commission in order to prevent the violations against or violence against the Adivasi population in the country. Further, there is a UN convention against torture. Now, India is not a party to this particular convention because, as I've already highlighted, India is subjected to many internal security challenges, and sometimes security agencies they resort to various techniques in order to gain information out of the terror accused. So, India has not signed this particular treaty because of its national security imperatives. So, in this regard, the NHRC it has appealed to the government that it should sign this particular treaty, and not just sign, but it should also ratify this treaty. So you can understand not just NHRC takes cognizance of various human rights violation in the country, but it also acts as a moral compass for the government in order what treaty should the government sign in order to better the situation of human rights in the country. Understood? So this is what the positive impact that the NHRC has had on the India's human rights climate. Now, also let us discuss what are the issues faced by NHRC in the country, because from time to time various law enforcement bodies and experts they've highlighted that NHRC is a toothless tiger, because first of all it is given some kind of responsibilities in order to prevent human rights violation, but on the other hand the NHRC is unable to prevent the human rights violation in the country. So in this regard, it has been termed as a toothless tiger. So let us understand why is it called a toothless tiger, which means let us understand what are the issues faced by NHRC in this regard. Now the first issue which has already been highlighted in the article is that the membership of NHRC is not diverse in nature, because most of the members they either have judicial or police background. So in the you can understand police forces they witness or they are subject to most allegations of human rights violation. But on the other hand, when members include police ex-police officers, it creates a conflict of interest. Further, today's news article it highlights that the Global Alliance on National Human Rights Institutions it has also highlighted that members of NHRC does not include members of the minority community or a women member. So this is what the non-diverse membership is all about, because on one hand members are mostly from judicial or police backgrounds, which creates conflict of interest, and on the other hand the minority community and women they do not have adequate representation in NHRC. Now let us understand why is there allegations of lack of adequate powers with NHRC. Because can NHRC punish the perpetrators for violation of human rights? The answer is not. Because NHRC it is only given powers to recommend, that is it can only recommend a compensation for in case of human rights violation. Further, these recommendations they are not binding on the government. So this means that the powers with respect to enforcement of human rights principles in India, it is not adequate with NHRC because it cannot punish the culprits and it can only recommend remedial measures. On the other hand, the commission it does not even have the contempt power which is necessary to enforce human rights violation and make sure that a government body pays adequate attention and implements the recommendations of NHRC. So it is not even given contempt powers to ensure its implementation. Further, the NHRC it is also subjected to somewhat limited jurisdiction, because first of all the jurisdiction of NHRC it does not extend to areas which have Armed Force Special Powers Act in place, because these are the areas which have disturbed law and order situation And in this regard, the armed forces of the country, they are given special powers to control law and order situation. But on the other hand, these areas are the ones which witness large amount of human rights violation, because law enforcement agencies, they can pick up persons even without a warrant. So the jurisdiction of NHRC does not extend to Armed Force Special Powers Act areas. Further, the NHRC, it can only ensure violation of inquiries into violation of Human Rights Act with respect to public bodies, that are government bodies. Whereas on the other hand, the private bodies, they are out of NHRC's jurisdiction as well. Also, NHRC can only take cognizance of the case up till 1 year of their incidences. So, if a case has happened for before more than 1 year, then the jurisdiction of NHRC is not extended to that particular case. So, these are the instances, that is lack of jurisdiction over AFSPA areas, lack of jurisdiction over private bodies, and lack of jurisdiction over cases which are more than 1 year older, highlight the limited jurisdiction of NHRC. Further, as you may have understood, that India's population in general have become much more aware about their human rights and what are the rights bestowed to people of India. So in case of violation, people have resorted to complaints with NHRC. So this has resulted into many pending cases with NHRC, because as per latest data of 2016, more than 40,000 cases have been pending with NHRC. And because of increased load and lack of adequate manpower, NHRC has been unable to discharge these cases in timely manner. So this brings me to another challenge, that is there is scarcity of resources currently with the NHRC, be it manpower, be it infrastructure, or be it finances. Because in terms of manpower, the NHRC, it has not been able to increase its institutional strength. So in this regard, the NHRC mostly relies on retired officials and hires them on a consultant basis. Whereas on the other hand, NHRC, it also does not have adequate manpower in their legal department, which is quite necessary for a body like NHRC. Whereas on the other hand, NHRC does not even have an independent source of revenue. So in this regard, for its day-to-day functioning and activities, the finances, they are sourced from Ministry of Home Affairs in a form of grants. So you can understand, as NHRC currently, it is dependent on retired government officials and finances, which are sourced by government itself. Then it subjects the NHRC to increased political interference, because most of the human rights violation allegations, they have been against the government and their related departments, be it armed forces or police forces. While on the other hand, the NHRC itself is sourcing their manpower and financing from the government itself. So this brings the attention of political interference. Further, as I have already highlighted, NHRC's membership, it comprises mainly of judicial and police officers, who again are the members of the government in one form or the other. So these are the issues, that first of all, NHRC does not have adequate powers, that its recommendations are only not binding on the government. It has limited jurisdiction, that it does not extend to AFSPA areas, private bodies, or for cases more than 1 year old. And this has led to increased pending cases of more than 40,000 cases. And this is because of scarcity of manpower and financial resources with the NHRC. Further, due to non-diverse membership and increased penetration of the government, it has brought allegations of political interference in day-to-day functioning of NHRC. So, because of lack of financial resources, the situation of NHRC is like Babu Bhaiya of Hera Fairy, because उनके पास खाने के लिए भी, जहर खाने के लिए भी पैसे नहीं है. So in this regard, let us now understand what is the ideal road ahead in order to make NHRC a more potent or effective body. So in this regard, let us first understand the first suggestion, that is granting the NHRC the constitutional status. And it is given in regard of as South African Human Rights Association or institution, it is given the status of constitutional body. So giving the constitutional status to a body like NHRC will make it more effective and its recommendations much more obligatory on the government of the day. Further, as I've already highlighted, for its manpower and financing needs, the NHRC is currently solely dependent on the government. So, in order to make it more autonomous, there is an inherent need to grant an independent cadre status to the staff of NHRC and ensure the financial independence of NHRC, which is done to increase its autonomy. Further, the powers and jurisdiction of the NHRC should be enlarged in a gradual manner, because as I've already highlighted, the powers of NHRC, it is just limited to giving recommendations to the government. However, when you make those recommendations binding, it will make NHRC much more effective body. Further, the jurisdiction of NHRC should also be enlarged, that it should include members of the armed forces and should also cover cases which are more than 1 year old. Because as I've already highlighted, there are too many pending cases with the NHRC which requires immediate attention. Further, as I've already highlighted, the NHRC, it can only recommend certain remedial measures. Whereas on the other hand, rather than recommending, making these actions binding on the government will make NHRC a more potent body. And also the suggestions given by NHRC should be implemented by the government in a quite fixed time frame in order to better the human rights situation in the country. So this was all for today's discussion on the body, that is National Human Rights Commission. With this, let us move to the second article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper, that is in its editorial section. Now this article has two parts. The first part, it highlights that RBI in its recent Monetary Policy Committee meeting, it has taken into account the incidences of extreme weather events and climate shocks which has impact on India's macroeconomic situation. Because on one hand, climate change can affect India's agricultural productivity, which can lead to increased food inflation. Hence, as RBI it wants to control inflation, hence it is necessary for RBI to monitor what are the developments related to climate change and its impact on India's economy. And the second half of this article, it highlights various measures that have been undertaken by a country's central bank in order to ensure green financing or measures of green financing in Indian economy. Now this topic, it is important from GS paper 3 syllabus, because mobilization of resources, it is highlighted in syllabus, and green financing, it is a measure to mobilize resources for financing of environmental friendly projects. Now in this regard, let us understand what are the macroeconomic impact of climate change with respect to Indian economy. Because as you've already understood, banks, they extend loans to individuals only after they have some kind of collateral. And these collateral are mostly in form of properties like homes. So whenever there's a climate change shock that can happen, it risks the value of collateral, that it can endanger the homes that are given as collaterals. So not just it increases the risk of values of collateral, that the values might lessen due to climate change events, and it also impacts the day-to-day functioning of banks, because they have to increase their risk provisioning with respect to the values of collateral. Further, the banks, it extends loans to various sectors. For example, it extends loans to agricultural sector. Now in case of climate change events such as floods and drought, it can lead to increased stress in the farming sector of the country, thereby increasing the chance of loans extended to agricultural sector getting non-performing assets. So if large amount of loans which are extended to agricultural sector and it is impacted by climate change, it negatively impacts the cash flow of banking sector. Hence we can see the increased NPA has a negative impact on India's banking sector. Further, during geopolitical shock events, the demand for liquidity increases. And this has implications on India's inflation levels as well, because naturally increasing liquidity will mean increasing chance of inflation in the country. So in this regard, it is necessary for a body like country's Reserve Bank of India to monitor various climate shock events, as it has multiple effects on India's macroeconomy, be it eroding the value of collateral, affecting negatively the cash flow of India's banking sector, and increasing the demand of liquidity, which can lead to increased amount of inflation. So in this regard, the RBI have come up with various instruments to extend green financing in the country. Now, the first and probably the most important instrument that is brought forward by the RBI, it is sorry, it is sovereign green bonds. Now, through these sovereign green bonds, the government issues these green bonds, and the proceeds that government gets, it invests them in environmental friendly projects. So you can understand such instruments, they ensure that government is getting cheap funds, and it is ensuring the disbursal of these funds for implementation of environmental friendly projects. Further, the RBI, it also came up with green deposits, where the investors, they can deposit their surplus cash, and the proceeds of these deposits, they'll be again used for environmental friendly projects. So through sovereign green bonds and green deposits, the RBI wants to make sure that the environmental friendly projects, they have access to cheap and long term financing needs. So this is why the RBI keep tabs on situation of climate change, as it can impact India's macroeconomy. And further, RBI has came up with various instruments in order to provide cheap climate friendly financing. So this was all for today's discussion on the second article, and we move to the third article, which you can see appeared in the Indian Express newspaper. Now, India's population has increased enormously in the past few decades. So naturally, to feed its increased population, India has witnessed green revolution, which has increased India's agricultural productivity in all manner. However, a consequence of this increased agricultural productivity has also been environmental pollution and degradation. Now, this environmental pollution and degradation is mentioned in GS Paper 3 syllabus. Further, various subsidies that are offered by government to its farmers have been changing India's cropping pattern in general, which has also impact on India's environmental pollution and degradation. So you can understand this topic, it is important from mains perspective. So in this regard, let us understand what are the challenges to environmental sustainability, especially through government subsidies and its policy measures. Because as I've already highlighted, increasing India's farm productivity required the government to provide its farmers with chemical fertilizers at cheap rates. Now, to provide these fertilizers to farmers at a pocket-friendly rates, the government provides them with subsidies on fertilizers such as urea, diammonium phosphate, and muriate of potash. However, the amount of subsidies extended for urea is quite large when compared to other fertilizers. Hence, farmers, they are utilizing more and more urea at cost of these other fertilizers. Now, this has damaged India's soil in many accounts, because it has increased the amount of urea used by farmers, which not just damages the soil, but it also increases the risk of pollution to India's water bodies, because these nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium nutrients, when they reach India's water bodies, it creates a situation of harmful algal bloom, which deteriorates the diversity of India's water bodies. Further, to provide irrigation services in India's farm, the state governments, they are providing farmers with either cheap or free electricity. So the farmers, they are utilizing these electricities to take out groundwater from India's grounds, and they are utilizing these groundwater to produce water intensive crops like rice and sugarcane. Now, not just these crops are water intensive, but misuse of groundwater has also reduced the amount of groundwater levels, especially in the state of Punjab, Haryana, as well as Western Uttar Pradesh. Additionally, the government of India, it also ensures that the farmers are provided with minimum support price for 23 crops in general. However, in practice, most of the procurement done under this MSP regime has been for rice and wheat. Now, as farmers are assured more or less for procurement of these two crops, it has reduced India's crop diversity away from more diverse cropping pattern to monocropping patterns such as growing of only rice and wheat. So this has not just reduced India's crop diversity, but it has also increased India's import dependence on other important crops such as oilseeds as well as pulses. So, government subsidy measures such as fertilizer subsidy, it has damaged Indian soils. Whether providing cheap and free electricity has led to groundwater depletion in many northwestern states. Further, utilizing MSP regime, government ensures support to farmers, but this, on the other hand, has reduced India's cropping diversity in general. So, in this regard, today's news article by Mr. Ashok Gulati, he has highlighted that instead of providing subsidies, the government should instead provide the farmers with income support, which will reduce the amount of distortions in India's farming sector, and it will also prove to be somewhat more environmentally sustainable in nature. Understood. So, this was all for mains discussion in today's news article. And with this, we move to second set of articles, which are mostly prelims related news articles. Now, this first news article in the next set, you can see appeared in the Indian Express newspaper, that is in the explain section. Now, if you look closely, this news article highlights India's nominal exchange rate as well as real effective exchange rates. Now, these terms are important from prelims perspective. Why? Because it has been asked by prelims before, particularly in the year 2022. Because you can see question asked India's nominal effective exchange rate, that is NEER, and also it also asked real effective exchange rate, that is REER. Now, these are important implications, especially as India has liberalized its economy. That means that India's trading with other countries has increased in recent past. So it is necessary for any country to have its currency pegged with other currency in order to make its export more trade competitive. So in this regard, let us discuss what are these nominal exchange rates and real exchange rates and what are its implications on India's trade competitiveness in general. Now, most of the news article generally they highlight that what are the values of Indian rupee is currently there vis-a-vis other important currencies such as US dollar. Now, as you must have noticed few years before, that is about 20 years before, one US dollar, it amounted for about 40 Indian rupees. But this rupee has somewhat depreciated in recent times, and currently value of $1 is more than 80 rupees in general. So this highlights that India's currency has depreciated with respect to US dollars. But you should also understand that India's trade is diverse in nature, that it not just trades with United States, but it also trades with other countries such as China, Europe, Japan, etc. So India's currency and its effectiveness should also be measured not just against US dollars, but also against many other currencies as well. And in this regard, effective exchange rate concept comes into picture. Because utilizing effective exchange rate, it consists of many currencies, and India's rupee is gauged or estimated against the values of many currencies in general, and it is done utilizing effective exchange rate concept. Because as you might have already understood, I highlighted India's rupee vis-a-vis US dollar. But when you have many other currencies in picture, you utilize effective exchange rate because it consists of basket of many currencies, and it consider these currencies in what is called as weighted average. Because as you understand, India's trading with other countries are not equal. India trades more with countries like China and European Union, whereas on the other hand, India's trade with other countries are somewhat low. So in this regard, this effective exchange rate concept, it takes a weighted average of many currencies, and it estimates what are the value of Indian rupees is currently with respect to other countries. Now, there are two types of effective exchange rates. The first is nominal exchange rate, and the other is real effective exchange rate, that is REER. Let us first understand what is this nominal effective exchange rate. Now, this nominal effective exchange rate is an index which calculates the value of various other currencies vis-a-vis Indian rupees. Now, again, it takes the value that is in weighted average amount, that is more the trade is that with other countries, its value is more, and it is utilized to understand the value of Indian rupee. Now, this nominal effective exchange rate, it is a summary index which captures the movement of external value of rupee against the backdrop of global currencies. Now, in this regard, country's Reserve Bank of India, it has constructed two kind of NEER indexes. The first index, it constitutes baskets of 6 currencies, mostly US dollar, pound of United Kingdom, Chinese yuan, Japanese yen, and other currencies. Whereas on the other hand, RBI it also has constructed a NEER index consisting of 40 currencies, which constitute about 88% of India's total trade. So the base value of this index, that is NEER, is calculated based on 2015-16 trade data. Now, whenever the value of NEER increases, it means that India's currency, it is appreciating or it is increasing in value with respect to other currencies. Whereas on the other hand, when reverse is true, that the value of NEER is reducing, it means that the India's currency, it is depreciating. Understood. So this is what the value of NEER is all about, that India's currency, that is rupee, it is calculated using the values of many other handful of other currencies, primarily which are used for trading with other countries. Now let us understand what is real effective exchange rate concept. Now, whenever NEER is utilized, it is utilized by calculating the values of current values. Now, whenever these current values, it is adjusted for inflation, it is calculated as real effective exchange rate. Now, whenever there is a decrease in the value of REER, it denotes that rupees is depreciating in nature. Whereas on the other hand, the reverse is true, that whenever REER is increasing, it means India's currency is also appreciating with respect to other countries. Now, whenever the value of REER is more than 100, this means that India's currency, that is rupees, it is more overvalued with respect to other countries. So this means that India's products will lose its trade competitiveness whenever the value of REER is over 100. Understood? So whenever REER or NEER increases, it means the currency is appreciating, and whenever REER or NEER is decreasing, it means the currency is also depreciating. It is direct relationship. Now, based on this information, let us now solve the practice question. With reference to Indian economy, consider the following statements. The first statement, real effective exchange rate, it is an inflation adjusted average rate at which rupee is exchangeable with that of US dollar. Now, this statement partially is correct. However, it is not just US dollar but handful of other currencies, that are basket of currencies are used to estimate the values of Indian rupee. So first statement is incorrect. Now the second statement, a decrease in REER, it denotes appreciation in rupees value, which again, as you can understand, is an incorrect statement, because decreasing REER or NEER means the depreciation and not appreciation of currency. Further, REER above 100, it denotes that rupee is undervalued, which again is an incorrect statement, because REER of more than 100, it denotes that rupee is overvalued. That means India's products will lose out on its trade competitiveness in export markets. Understood. So, how many of the statements given above is or are correct? The answer to this model question is option D, as none of the options were correct. Now let us consider another article which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now this article, it highlights that the palace, that is Kilamanur Palace in the state of Kerala, which was the palace where the Raja Ravi Varma was born, it is about to unveil the true copy of Raja Ravi Varma's painting, that is Indulekha. Now, various important paintings such as Indulekha and Kalamkari, it has been subject of UPSC's question in the prelims of previous year. Case in point, this 2015 question, you can see UPSC asked a question related to Kalamkari painting. Further, these paintings and important artists, they are part of India's cultural heritage and diversity. So this news article, it is important not just from prelims perspective but also from GS paper 1 perspective. Now in this regard, let us know more about Raja Ravi Varma and his important works. Now Raja Ravi Varma, he is known as an originator of School of Modern Painting. Why the word modern? Because he brought together the elements of South Indian painting and he combined them with Western techniques of color and style. So he was an originator of modern painting techniques in India. Further, he was patronized by the king of the state of Travancore, who was Aliam Tirunal. Further, he was trained in water paintings by Raja Ramaswamy Naidu, and in oil painting, he was trained by British portraitist, that was Theodore Jensen. Now, most important or most famous of his works, they include a depictive episodes of story on Dushyant and Shakuntala, Nala and Damayanti, which are sourced from Mahabharata. So you can understand most of the subjects of Raja Ravi Varma painting, it was based on Hindu deities. Further, he was responsible for major works such as Lady in Moonlight, Mother India, and he gained national-wide recognition because of his painting titled Ravana Kidnapping Sita, which was, as you can understand, was based on the Ramayana. Further, it was Lord Curzon, who was Viceroy in India. He bestowed upon him the title of Raja, as well as he awarded him with Kaisar-e-Hind gold medal. So this was the important facts related to Raja Ravi Varma. So in this regard, let us consider the practice question. The first statement, the famous painting of Indulekha, it is credited to Raja Ravi Varma, and this is a correct statement because the news article, it highlights that Indulekha is said to be unveiled by the Kilamanuru Palace, and this painting was credited to Raja Ravi Varma. Now, Aliam Tirunal, who was the Maharaja of Travancore, he patronized Raja Ravi Varma. Again, this second statement is correct because he was patronized by the then king of Travancore and he was trained by Raja Ramaswamy Naidu and Theodore Jensen. Correct. Now, the third statement, Viceroy Lord Minto, he conferred the title of Raja to Ravi Varma. Now, this statement is incorrect because it was Viceroy Curzon and not Minto who conferred Ravi Varma with the title of Raja. So, as two statements were correct, that is first and second, hence the correct answer to this model question is option B, that is only two statement. Now, let us move to the third article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Indian Express newspaper. Now, this news article, it highlights that India's spice exports, such as of important brands, they have been subjected to rejection in various Western markets because of contamination with Salmonella bacteria. Further, recently, news have been also there because India's spices that are exported to other countries, they have been found with ethylene oxide, which is an carcinogenic chemical. Now, these contaminants, they are important from prelims perspective because as you can see in the question of year 2017, questions were asked on commonly used consumed materials and what are the controversial chemicals that are found in them. Further, the syllabus of GS paper 3 requires the aspirants to be aware of the fields of biotechnology. So, in this regard, let us discuss what are the Salmonella bacteria and what is ethylene oxide. Now, these are food contaminants in nature because Salmonella, it is a rod-shaped gram-negative bacteria which is responsible for food poisoning in humans. Now, these are found in variety of food products such as meat, poultry, eggs, and dairy products, as well as vegetarian items such as food, vegetables, and processed foods. Now, the contamination with this kind of bacteria commonly occurs when the food comes into contact with fecal matters of infected humans or animals. Further, the symptoms of this bacteria infection, it can be understood by diarrhea, abdominal cramps, fever, nausea, as well as vomiting. Now, also India's spices, they were formed contaminated with a compound called ethylene oxide. Now, it is originated in crops which have been sourced from agricultural sector and food processing sectors, and crops such as spices, vegetables, they are used. Ethylene oxide is used in them as a sterilizing agent because it reduces the microbial load in food products and commodities such as spices, which are more susceptible to bacterial contamination. Further, because of their carcinogenic nature, which means they can cause cancer, the use as fumigants in food products have been somewhat regulated in general. So, these are the important contaminants that were in news, that are Salmonella and ethylene oxide. Now, based on this information, let us now solve the practice question. Now consider the following pairs, the pair which highlight food products and unwanted chemicals. The first pairing is Chinese food products with that of rhodamine B. Now this is a correct pairing because this chemical, that is rhodamine B, it is used in food products in order to give them pink in color. So this chemical, it is used in cotton candies and Chinese food products to impart dark or pink color in them. So the use of rhodamine was recently banned in states such as Karnataka, especially as it was used in popular Chinese fast food products. Further, the spices, they are contaminated with ethylene oxide, which I've already explained. Because this ethylene oxide, they are used as a sterilizing agent in spices in order to reduce the microbial loads in them. So the second pairing also is correct. Now the mangoes, they are adulterated with calcium carbide because calcium carbide, it leads to earlier ripening of mangoes. Thereby, it is an important contaminant and is being widely used because this calcium carbide, it is responsible for producing acetylene. So, as all three pairings in this question is correct, hereby the correct answer to this model question is option C because all these three contaminants are correct. Now, more details I have mentioned in the notes which you can refer to after the session ends. Now, let us understand the last article of the day, which again appeared in the Indian Express Explained section. Now, this news article highlights that Microsoft, it has launched a new special small language model or SLM, which is Phi 3. Now, awareness in the field of IT, such as large language models, generative AI, as well as small language models, it is important from exams perspective. Further, questions related to IT sector, space sector have been frequently asked in the UPSC before. Case in point, this PYQ of the year 2022 on non-fungible tokens. So in this regard, let us understand what are these small language models all about. Now, most of you must be aware of the generative AI tools such as ChatGPT of OpenAI as well as Gemini of Google. Now, these ChatGPTs, they are trained using large language models because the use of these generative AI products are quite diverse, because they can be used to generate content, they can generate images, videos, and other kinds of uh, content. Whereas on the other hand, these small language models, they are utilized only for specific tasks. So the amount of data that you require to train these small language models, it is quite less, which enable these small language models to have a specific task. So these are the advantages of small language models, that they are somewhat compact and more streamlined versions of large scale language models, which makes them cost effective in nature. And also, as these are trained using small set of data, hence they perform better on smaller devices such as laptops and smartphones. Further, these small language models, they can be customized for specific tasks, especially in order to achieve accuracy and more efficiency. Further, as I've already have highlighted, that the small language models, they have very specific tasks, hence they undertake only targeted training. So they demand somewhat less computing power and energy, thereby making them more efficient when compared to large language models. Further, there is also a term called inference latency, which means quicker the response of any language model. So in this regard, the small language models, as they are more efficient and require less amount of data, they are more efficient in respect to inference latency, that they can quickly respond to various commands. So these small language models, they are compact in size, thereby they are utilized wherever quick processing is required, be it virtual assistants as well as chatbots. Further, they are quite highly versatile in nature. That's why they have various diverse application, right from sentiment analysis to generation of computer codes. Further, there are also other popular small language models such as Llama 2, which was developed by Meta, as well as Mistral and Mixtral, which are developed by Microsoft rather than Phi and Okra. So these are the important small language models. Now, with this information, let us now solve the practice question with respect to small language models or SLM. Consider the following statements. Now, SLMs, they are trained on massive general data, which is an incorrect statement because they are trained on smaller data sets. Further, these SLMs, they are cost effective to develop and operate. This is a correct statement because they require less amount of processing and data. That's why they are very cost effective in nature. Further, these SLMs, they are useful and can be applied in sentiment analysis and code generation, which again is a correct statement because their use is diverse, right from implementing chatbots, virtual assistants to generation of codes. These small language models, they can be utilized on large scale. Further, OpenAI's GPT-4, it is the latest version of small language model, which again is an incorrect statement because generative tool like ChatGPT, they are utilized or they are trained utilizing large language models and not small language models. So how many of the above statement is or are correct? Now, as you can see, as only statement 2 and statement 3 were correct, thereby right answer to this practice question is option B. So with this, I conclude our today's session of Daily News Simplified, and please stay tuned to Raus IAS YouTube channel as we put up Daily News Simplified on a daily basis right at 6 p.m. sharp. So until then, I bid you a very good night.